Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to this Clinton Global Initiative's Building Resilient Solutions event series. This week, as the United Nations General Assembly convenes for the 75th time, members from the CGI Action Network are coming together to continue to promote a more resilient Caribbean region, while grappling with the health and economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic amid an above-average hurricane season. Today's program will focus on youth, and specifically the importance of their leadership in transforming our planet. I'm excited to hear from our youth empowerment leaders and students themselves as they share how they are pioneering resilient, inclusive, and equitable solutions to climate change. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Hakim Mohandas Amani Williams, Associate Professor of Africana Studies and Director of Peace and Justice Studies at Gettysburg College. At Gettysburg, he teaches on human rights, post-colonialism, race, gender, and identity, education for social change, and Caribbean studies. His research centers on school and structural violence, educational inequalities, and youth empowerment. Although he couldn't be with us here live today, Dr. Hakim has recorded his remarks for us, and we will be sharing those with you right now.
Greetings, and thank you for that introduction. I'm sorry that I can't be with you live because I'm currently teaching a class appropriately called Education for Social Change. Nonetheless, I'm quite grateful to the Clinton Global Initiative for letting me offer a brief statement. The title of my opening remarks is Pre-Disaster Machinations and Post-Disaster Reimaginations. I grew up in a small socioeconomically disadvantaged community called Laventille on the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The community was a paradox to me. It teemed with creativity and yet was simultaneously bedeviled by poverty, violence, gang warfare, drugs, and high unemployment rates. Back then, I lacked the vocabulary and the systemic understanding to analyze the structural violence of Laventille and similar other communities. I did not comprehend that Laventille was shaped by particular historical, global, and macro-structural influences. Laventille, however, has inspired me to return and study violence in schools, and in so doing, I now recognize how direct or physical violence doesn't occur within a vacuum, and that it needs to be reconceptualized to be more fully understood. It is the same with this concept of disasters. We cannot look at modern-day disasters in the Caribbean without anchoring them in a historical and globalized analysis. The Caribbean is one of the few regions of the world to have experienced colonialism, slavery, and indentureship. This triad of historical oppressions is itself the beginning of disaster in the Caribbean. It was a region violently reordered by external dictates, as it became a cauldron for global capitalist experimentation. As Eric Williams so eruditely wrote in his seminal text, Capitalism and Slavery, sugar plantations informed an economic monoculture in the Caribbean, a model from which I contend we have not yet escaped, even 500 years later. We are indeed beset by an array of externalities. The Caribbean and other small island developing states contribute less than 1% of greenhouse gas emissions, but will incur and are incurring the brunt of global climate change. In the Caribbean, sea levels are rising 4 times faster than the global average. And we do know that sea level rises can pollute underground water resources. Our coastlines are being eroded. There are rising temperatures, longer dry seasons and droughts, and shorter but more dramatic rainy seasons, which all affect agriculture. We have bleached coral reefs, which affect fishing industries, and we are witnessing stronger and more frequent hurricanes and tropical storms, which threaten the tourism industry on which many Caribbean islands depend. All of this is compounded by past austerity measures, some of which have been enforced by structural adjustment programs, from the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. We now face a crisis of deepening inequities and unsustainable development. Confronted by all of this, how do we adapt? And not just adapt, but transform and thrive. I suggest 3 avenues, and this list, of course, is by no means exhaustive. 1, investment in regional solidarity and South-South collaboration. 2, augmenting youth activism, the focus of this panel today. And 3, transforming our educational systems to be more student-centered and more innovation-driven. Regional solidarity and South-South collaboration do not preclude partnerships with the global North, but the word partnership ought to be emphasized here. In other words, more horizontal relations, more capacity building, more leading with Caribbean voices. As for the youth, we are aware that they constitute about 20% of the Caribbean population, and their unemployment rates are about 2 to 3 times higher than other age cohorts. However, the youth give me exuberant hope. I work with youth in Trinidad. I provide them with training in conflict resolution and leadership development so that they can become the leaders that we need them to be. We need to further decolonize our educational systems and to include content pedagogies and skills building around innovation. Our Caribbean youth have so much talent and creativity. Let's harness this and amplify it. Around climate change across the Caribbean, from Cuba, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, and Haiti, to Barbados, Guyana, Aruba, Martinique, and Guadeloupe, youth are starting to take the lead. Whether it is through cleanup and other conservation campaigns, environmental literacy, mapping vulnerable areas with community leaders, insisting that they are a part of policy discussions and decisions, or creating their own NGOs. We are so proud of the work that youth are doing in the Caribbean. We know for sure that we can no longer keep youth on the margins. Their moment is here. May you have productive and honest discussions today, and may we all do what we can to support youth in envisioning and crafting sustainable futures now. Thank you, and all the best. Greetings, and thank you for that introduction.
Dr. Hakim, when you have finished teaching your class and you're able to watch this session, just hope that you know how thankful we are for your remarks that you've shared with us today. There are a few things that especially resonate as relates to CGI and the work of our Action Network members. First, as Dr. Hakim mentioned, in order to move forward on these conversations and really take action to get to the root of the issues, we must all fully understand the historical oppression of the region and how it continues to manifest through our systems and perpetuate ecological issues. The second is a call to action around horizontal partnership building and capacity building, while following the lead of Caribbean people. I think this is something we can all practice as we work to build partnerships and programs across the region. And lastly, promoting and supporting youth activism, which leads us to the next portion of today's session, which will be moderated by Rosalie Pina. Rosalie never fails to inspire me and models what it means to truly be a sustainable development advocate. She's always been curious and fascinated by the world of technology, and she's used it to address some of the most critical challenges we face today. She is a digital business executive that works with product teams in over 30 countries to accelerate digital transformation. Thanks so much for being with us here today, Rosalie.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this Clinton Global Initiative Action Network session entitled The Future is Now, Inspiration from Youth-Led Activism in the Caribbean. It's my absolute pleasure to be here with you today. All across the world, young people are making a bold and brave statement, and that is, we will act now. Young people have successfully positioned themselves and their groups at the forefront of some of the most monumental social justice movements in recent history. Today, we will be joined by 3 youth leaders who are leading change in the Caribbean. With us today, we have Talia Mohammed, Sustainable Energy and Environmental Development Strategist. Talia aspires to elevate the awareness of the cultural and social barriers to sustainable development, including promoting strategic alliances both locally and regionally. She has over 2 decades of experience working in the environment and climate fields and is currently the director of Ideas Foundation. With us also is Sydney Paul, who is the manager and business intelligence marketing of the University of the Virgin Islands Research and Technology Park. Sydney is an amazing young woman that I had the pleasure of meeting earlier this year, and she supports the RT Park's business attraction and entrepreneurship activities through detailed research on tech market trends. Sydney decided to return home to St. Croix after studying in the US to foster progressive community and to tell the story of the Virgin Islands history through art and culture. And then we also have with us Miss Dana Yari, who is the head of programs for Israel Aid Dominican. Dana joined Israel Aid in 2019, first as the director of programs for South Sudan, focusing on youth and gender-based violence protection sector. Then later she became the country director for Israel Aid Dominica. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, ladies, and it's a pleasure to be hosting the session. Welcome. Okay, so we are going to go into some of the discussion around our topic today. Now, beginning with Sydney, tell us why it is important for you to be here today and to discuss youth empowerment and activism.
Hi, Shelley, and good afternoon, everyone. It's very, very good to be here. I think this conversation is so important because we're in a moment right now, not just globally, but of course in the Caribbean, facing multiple challenges, and whether it be climate change issues, whether it be the pandemic, whether it be economic issues, all of these things can be tied together as well, right? I think that this conversation is important because, like I've said many, many times before when I'm talking to our community members, we are the change that we want to see. We experience these challenges every single day. So we have to be the people with the solutions, right? We live it every day. We know what our cultural, how our culture impacts those things. So looking to our youth, we expect and want to bring out the best in them because they have the innovations, the innovative solutions that we need to see. So that's why I think this conversation is so important today.
Thank you, Sydney. And Talia, why are you here today to speak about youth activism? Why is that important to you?
Better? Yeah, sorry about that. Hope it's not no technical difficulties. So for years, I have been formally and informally taking part in climate change and environmental youth activity. And now I think it's more than ever very critical that we understand that as a Caribbean and as a region, we need to collaborate and work together and manage how we go about environmentalism and activism with regard to climate change. More than ever with our young people that are coming up, that I'm so very proud to know and meet, and especially in Trinidad and Tobago, I'm inspired all the time by our young people, well, younger than I am. They are very passionate. They understand the rigor of activism. They also understand the functionality of having a registered organization and doing it in a more systematic way. So I think now more than ever, we as a generation, so I would be Generation X, have more than ever responsibility to empower and promote these young people and find a way for them to learn from us, and also for us to open up communication channels for learning from each other. It's too often when I was now getting into the environmentalism, advocacy type of work, more than just learning it and becoming qualified in it, where I would find myself at a loss for a mentor. So, and typically who we saw as mentors were our academic professional professors, which played a good part, but they also did not have some of the mentorship that I would require to go further into activism. So I think more than ever now, we need to find ways as a region and as organizations to find ways to empower young people and to improve upon the work that has been done by those that have led the way in the past, because we did not reach here without action, and there are many that did a lot of good work that are unrecognized in the Caribbean.
Right. Thank you so much, Talia. So we segue to Dana. Also, why is it important for you to be here, as somebody who's been involved with Israel Aid? And yes, why are you here today to speak about activism?
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us today and for everyone for joining us. Israel is a community-centered international organization operating around the world to support humanitarian aid initiatives aiming to create a better future for all. And to make this a concept of a better, stronger future a reality, we focus much of our work on youth and child development, investing many of the resources in these demographics. So just in the Americas alone, Dominica, Bahamas, Colombia, Guatemala, and up to recently Mexico and Haiti, we spend over 50% of our resources on child and youth empowerment. And in Dominica in particular, we partner with the wonderful Beverly Foundation and together created a joint vision for a future where Dominica enjoys a healthy, vibrant, and locally led society, rooted in preparedness and inclusiveness and in conservationism. We know and we feel that children and youth are the meaning.
Okay, so I think you're back. Go ahead, Dana.
Where did you lose me?
Yes, so you're saying that you believe that youth are important?
Yeah, we believe and we know that children and youth are the meaningful pathway for such a vision. And so Israel, together with the Beverly Foundation, focus our interventions on three key pillars that are all around youth development. And that is protection through Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, disaster risk reduction through resiliency building, and climate resiliency building. So we're excited to be here today to discuss this further and our most relevant interventions, which are especially relevant now in the time of this global pandemic.
Thank you. So Sydney, we have heard a lot about, the youth are the future and we need to give youth an opportunity. Now, what do you perceive, Sydney, is the role of youth in the Caribbean where activism is concerned? And what is the RT Park doing to support and empower youth?
Yeah, definitely. I think that that youth, when you think about young people, they have less inhibitions. They are risk takers, right? And I think we need a little bit more of that in the region, and especially because of how critical climate change and things like this are. So the RT Park is at its core a business attraction organization. We do economic development specifically for technology and knowledge-based businesses, but we also attract sustainable development, innovative thinkers and companies and things like that. That's what it has been at its core. But most recently, with the new team that we brought on in the past 2 years, including myself, we wanted to make the organization more programmatic. We wanted to focus on uplifting and encouraging and giving our community the resources that they need to be more innovative, because like we've talked about already, you know, we have really talented creative thinkers who live in the region. So we want to give them the tools to do that. So we've developed several programs really quickly in the last 2 years that have been pretty successful and we're very proud of. The first that is very related to this is VI STEM Kids. It's a coding course / camp that we want to expand to be full school year round. And this summer we implemented it in the Caribbean Center for Boys and Girls in the Virgin Islands, which has 3 locations, 2 on St. Croix and 1 on St. Thomas. Through a very generous donation by one of the Virgin Islanders, who we call a Virgin Islands asset. Her name is Rashida Hodge. She works at IBM and was recognized as a Fortune Magazine 40 Under 40 recently. She's amazing and was able to help us donate 60 Chromebooks to kids who participated in this program. And at the end of the course, they were able to code on their own using Scratch and create their own storylines, all from scratch, which was amazing. And we're hoping to expand that later on this year. Another program that that's geared towards younger people in the Virgin Islands is called Vista Plus, which stands for the Virgin Islands STEM Talent Archive. We're launching it next week, actually. We just had a soft launch with some of the RT Parks tech companies who are in our program. But essentially what Vista Plus is an online database that will connect Virgin Islanders who not only live at home, but are in our larger diaspora. So we have a brain drain problem, like I'm sure other Caribbean islands have. And one of the motivations behind building this program was to reverse that and get them back home, get these innovative thinkers back home, offering solutions, being leaders, being outspoken advocates for different, more creative solutions to our problems. So that's launching next week. I'm very excited about that because it's my baby. And to be selfish, I'm a millennial, and I'm looking forward to a lot of my friends moving back home, because I have conversations with my friends who live abroad about things that we can be doing, and some of them are hesitant to move back home, but we're hoping that this program encourages them, because we have a lot of tech companies who are looking for local talent. And there's just hasn't been that conversation happening between the two. So we're hoping that Vista Plus bridges that gap. The third program that we've worked on, which doesn't necessarily doesn't work with younger Virgin Islanders, but our young adults and beyond, is our accelerator program, which is called Accelerate VI. So that launched last year. We had 2 cohorts of Accelerate VI that were very successful. 14 startup companies have gone through the program. 11 of those have been Caribbean companies. 10 of them have been Virgin Islands companies. And then we had one very special startup called Squeeze Cash. And they're from a mix between St. Lucia and Nevis, I believe. So that program has been going really well. And our thinking and vision behind these programs is to show young people that there are people who look like them, that are the same age as them, doing very cool, innovative things, right? Like we want to remove that barrier that they think that they don't have the resources or tools or guidance, because we are sort of populating and aggregating all of those individuals, those mentors, financing if there need be for the startups, the Chromebooks, these devices to remove all of those barriers. So that's what the RT Park has been working on. And it's been well received. You know, I think about Virgin Islanders who that we're reaching out to. So for instance, you know, I read a story about a young man, St. John, who was using sargassum seaweed to create clean energy. We have startups in the program who are working on fintech to help Caribbean people be more financially independent and savvy and things like that. You know, they exist, they're there. So we're hoping that our programs, once we showcase them to people, showcase the people who are participating in the programs, it will encourage more young people to say, we can use technology to be innovative. We feel comfortable with technology, and taking those risks to provide solutions. So that's what we've been working on. It's been very exciting, and it's been going very, very well.
Thank you, Sydney. So, I mean, if there's anything COVID-19 has taught us is that we really have to tap into technology some more. So I'm very happy that you're working on those things. Now, Talia, we have seen where, you know, we're empowering young people to basically, you know, reinvent our old systems and reimagine, you know, what our systems would look like and our policies would look like. How important do you think succession planning is to that process, and also mentorship?
So, well, I'll touch on some of the stuff Sydney mentioned afterwards. So basically, for the last 5 years, there have been a number of consortium projects also in Trinidad where they were aimed at NGOs collaborating. The last two that I took part in was the Canary, which is the Caribbean Natural Resource Institute, and Cropper Foundation. They both had a similar, one was CSOs for Good Environmental Governance, that's Cropper, and one was the CSOs for Good Governance. And being part of that consortium project and other, as a consultant with NGOs, the trend I've noticed within the last 5 years or so where I've been working more so with NGOs was that, and you keep hearing it at these different consortium projects, we need to implement business strategy into how we manage our groups, NGOs, nonprofits, civil society organizations, even now our youth-led organizations need to look at this critically, whereby, so very quickly, this is a strategy that most companies employ in order to make sure that their leadership and their experienced leaders pass on critical information to those that would be replacing them. And it's quite important when you talk about retaining knowledge capacity of the organization and also improving upon it. So very quickly, succession planning is a deliberate and systematic effort by an organization to ensure leadership and continuity in key positions, to retain and develop intellectual and knowledge capital for the future and encourage individual advancement. So this is by William J. Rothwell. He is a very much expert in effective succession planning. And one of the reasons why when Gori engaged me to talk at this panel was to bring up this topic in order for us to take heed of the importance of it right now. Now more than ever, we have young people that have access to technology and tools that I did not have access to when I was now becoming an activist, I should say. And I would have been in the early 2000s. And it's quite important that we also employ succession planning as a tool for reimagining how we do things using information that would have been gained that you can't probably gain in a textbook, that our generations that have the experience and who I know I have the pleasure of learning from locally due to these projects, would have been able to teach me that I would not get from a textbook or not get even from having access to technology and all these other opportunities that they do have. So one of the first, I think, a similar activity that I got involved in back in 2013 was something called Google Startup Weekend. And Sydney, I don't know if you might have heard of it. It was one of the first things that we had in the Caribbean where we had a boot camp and you got the opportunity to work in new teams and to come up with innovative ideas and solutions for problems we have specifically to the Caribbean. Since then, I've seen a lot of transition with boot camps and access to technology and tools and learning and driving capacity in young people, but I have not seen a strategic collaborative effort by those who may have been stalwarts in the field, having the ability to pass on critical knowledge. And I think one of our challenges in the Caribbean is that the projects and the grant funding that we have access to, it's probably difficult for them to recognize this or to even get funding for it when it's quite necessary and important right now in order to leverage our young people. And as Sydney mentioned, I know young people coming back to the Caribbean. One of the pleasures I had to work with was Mr. Jonathan Barkan from an NGO called I Am Movement, and he is a returning resident to Trinidad, where he was fully trained and has expertise, and decided to come back to Trinidad to help with our environmental movement down here. And his NGO has been making good strides in climate action. So basically, right now, I think we need to leverage our passionate young people, but we also need to understand that we cannot make the same mistakes that the generations past have done, which is, and it's quite prevalent here as well too, we are seeing some CSOs and nonprofits actually closing down because they did not have a proper strategy or plan to get new leaders into the organization and take the mission and vision forward. And sometimes it's just a lack of resources or just not even having the understanding that that was needed. So we need organizations to collaborate more effectively and to have this as a critical strategic plan for the organization. Even the youth-led organizations, I am challenging you all to find a more established CSO NGO and form a partnership with them. Develop relationships with some of their leaders and their incumbents and those who have done a lot in order for us to reach here. Because there's some laws and legislations that would have never happened if it wasn't for intense lobbying on behalf of those generations that have already done good work. So the benefits right now, I think, would be to align strategic goals and human resources of our very engaged and empowered organizations, both youth-led and the other well-established ones, to enable the right people in the right place at the right time to achieve the results that we need for the Caribbean, which is we need improved leadership, we need knowledge enhancement, and we need also innovation and critical entrepreneurship in order for us to be resilient and to adapt. We need to develop these qualified pools of candidates and have them ready to fill these positions of mentor and mentee. We need to provide and stop using this term. We use it so whimsically sometimes, leadership, mentorship, and we need to understand that this is critical to enhancing what we have done already in the Caribbean. So even those that have not, probably did not think that they may want to get into politics. I remember one of my teachers asking me very profusely in class when I was doing my master's, "You sure you don't want to get into politics?" And just because of my understanding and not having a respect, I should say, for some of the politicians in the Caribbean, it kind of dissuaded me to say, no, I don't think I'll ever get into politics. But as an older person now, I understand the critical role that we do need young people and probably people at my age now to get into political positions in order to bring about the change that we need. So we also need to identify the human capacity, and we need to help these individuals, the young people, understand that there are a lot of career and goals and aspirations that are within the field, and it's been growing quite tremendously since the SDGs and sustainable development being recognized as an actual field now of study.
So Talia, I wanted to, segue into, looking at what you just said, which was, really important to what is really happening in our Caribbean context. We need to empower young people with the tools and the skills to respond to the changing dynamic that is existing in the world, and for them not only being consumers of the technology but producers of it. So I wanted to touch on Dana. Tell us some more about what Israel Aid is doing in terms of like capacity building, and what is the reception like from the youth in Dominica for those programs that you're providing?
Thank you very much. So for the past 2 years, Israel's work in Dominica centered around creating livelihood opportunities for Dominican youth, largely through capacity building and skills training. And our programs range from vocational skills training, like resilient or hurricane-proof carpentry courses and sustainable beekeeping, all the way to business skills development, even an entrepreneurship youth hackathon program to give youth the full set of tools to becoming entrepreneurs and like Talia said, becoming the next generation. This year, we were searching for a way in which we not only just enhance the beneficiary capacities, but also trying to increase the potential sources of income. So in other words, increasing the economic pie. And after a comprehensive assessment of the global marketplace and an in-depth assessment and mapping of the needs in Dominica, we realized that Dominica will be an ideal location to introduce the international online gig market or online freelancing market. Mm-hmm. What we've seen is that in developing countries, the online gig or online freelancing market through platforms like Upwork, freelancer.com, Fiverr, and others is huge, and it's really growing rapidly. And with the new COVID reality, we saw that this growth has just increased. What we noticed with our assessment is that Dominica is situated perfectly to benefit and tap into this new freelance economy because of its proximity to the US and the time zone, its predominant language being English, its motivated, super motivated younger population, and our desire to stop, like Sydney said, the brain drain, and the wage disparity, which gives essentially the freelancers here in Dominica a comparative advantage. We began discussing this program with our partners, with the Beverly Foundation, the Government of Dominica, and the Ministry of Digital Economy, and UNDP here in Dominica back in January. And by April, with the new state of COVID or the state of the world, it was clear to us that this is the time to begin a pilot implementation. So for the pilot program, we selected 60 young adults, mostly under 30, from all over Dominica with a whole range of skill sets. We partnered with a local youth-led private organization that teaches online freelancing. And we also partnered with an international freelancing platform. And together with the government endorsement, we launched the 12-week program that is combining both soft skills, so how to regrow your motivation and your desire and your capacities, together with more digital skills training. And that's really up to the beneficiary's specific preference. Currently, we're about halfway through the program, and so far the results are just remarkable. All of our students signed up for all the various online platforms we suggested and created their profiles. Many of them have already received interview invites, and some of them have already received job offers or gig offers, which is much more than we could have anticipated in only 6 weeks. So we really look forward to continuing this pilot to measure the impact and then hopefully continue this intervention further, not only here in Dominica, but hopefully in other countries in the region as well that enjoy the same kind of
Yes, thank you so much, Dana. So Sydney, we sometimes in the Caribbean, there are a lot of programs happening. So Dana touched on some that she's working with Israel Aid, and then Talia touched on some as well. And they're really brilliant programs. But sometimes, young people do not know that a lot of these programs exist, and some of them just are not able to tap into these opportunities. So what would you say are some of the strategies that you and your team have been implementing to encourage young people to get involved in the initiatives?
Yeah, I think that everything that Dana said was super interesting, as well as Talia, and I have some points on that fall into what your question is. Outside of the RT part, I think that having or encouraging youth to become more engaged is giving them the comfort that their voices won't be minimized, right? So we live in a or at least here in the Virgin Islands, and from personal experience, I'm sure in other Caribbean islands it's the same way. But you come back home as a young person, and maybe you have a really strong voice, and you are motivated to engage and partner with organizations that have been around for a while, to give them new ideas and things like that. And sometimes because you're a younger person, they don't necessarily take you on or give you the platform or the time to hear your thoughts. And it could just be because they, sometimes just see you as a young person, and maybe you don't have the experience that they're looking for yet. I encourage, more established organizations and groups to give and uplift those voices. Even if they seem a little risky or seem a little bold or are not necessarily what the status quo is, I encourage those organizations to give those young people a platform, because we need to encourage them and give support, or else they might, separate into factions of, well, I'll create my own organization. And then there are redundancies and things like this when we could be collaborating and partnering together. And those young voices are fresh, innovative, are looking at things through a new lens, are looking at things through an evolved lens, because, as a society, things evolve, technology evolves, communities evolve, culture, art, those things evolve. So we can't necessarily think that a young person needs more experience when they're bringing a whole fresh new experience that isn't even being discussed. So I just wanted to say that first. So through the RT Park, and especially considering the pandemic, which has, turned everything upside down with how we would love to engage with young people, we're doing a lot of online grassroots engagement. So there are other projects that we're working on that are more focused on sustainable development. And what we've noticed is there are a lot of people, because everybody's online, are creating new brands for themselves, creating podcasts, creating video blogs, creating Facebook Live series, creating Instagram story series, things like that. And those young people are in this time making something of this really unfortunate situation, and they have audiences. So what we've been doing is, especially with Vista Plus, which we're launching soon, we're going to be talking to those young influencers that we know in our community who have that platform, letting them know about what the program is, and then having them distribute that to their audiences. Especially now, what I've noticed is young people are really supporting other young people. And because technology has given you the platform outside of more brick and mortar organizations, you know what I mean? The internet has been such a great platform to uplift young people, because they can uplift themselves in mass. You know what I mean? So that grassroots individual one-on-one talks, whether it be virtually or whatnot, has been pretty effective. We're continuing our regular digital media campaigns to reach out to the important audiences for these programs. Radio campaigns are still very popular in the Virgin Islands, but I think that considering the pandemic, considering racial justice movements around the globe right now, the internet has become its own sort of grassroots organization. You know what I mean? Its own grassroots platform. So we're using that to connect with young people, and that has seemed to been especially effective right now.
Yeah, Sydney, I'm very happy you mentioned the examples of young people starting their own podcasts and blogs and just taking this, and just taking this opportunity or this disaster as, you know, an opportunity to tap into some, you know, passion projects that they may have had for a long time. Dana, so with just or rather Talia, let's go to Talia. So with the COVID-19 pandemic, you know, we have been forced to go digital. Whether or not we wanted to so soon, we have had to, you know, so we're in the age of remote working and so forth. How do you see things changing, and what would you want to see change in regards to education and mentorship, given what has happened with the pandemic? What are your aspirations where that is concerned?
Well, I would definitely like to see more collaboration and partnership type projects with different varying levels of experience and NGOs and CSOs and even PPPs, you know, private-public partnerships. I think more than ever, so succession planning in the past has also been used to strategize for business continuity planning. And we all know with COVID-19, we need persons who could fulfill multiple roles at an organization. So we need those who are tech savvy, but we also need those who could pick up the phone and call and talk to the Prime Minister if they need to, or have the experience to also pull together a very quick strategy team meeting if something that is happening is in risk of jeopardizing any of the projects that are happening on the ground. So I think more than ever, we need to have some collaboration type projects that inform and strategize on mentorship, leadership, knowledge capacity enhancement. And so we have opportunities for timely and critical knowledge transfer right now with established experts in the field and those that are growing in expertise and knowledge and capacity. So for example, one of the CSOs that I've been helping since the beginning of the year, pre-COVID, and we had to quickly re-strategize. It's an entity called the Caribbean Philanthropic Alliance. And we had a project planned for this year called the Caribbean Tree Planting Project, which, as you can tell from its title, it involved going into the field and planting trees. For us in Trinidad and Tobago, our strategy, so how it's done, it's CariPhil Alliance is headquartered in Jamaica, and the Caribbean Tree Planting Project was envisioned to be carried out in all the islands based on team leadership at each island level. And now with the new norm, we had to strategize on how do we continue the work without getting to actually go into the field and plant as much trees as we would have liked to with bigger groups. So our plan in Trinidad and Tobago, we came up with something called Plant Your Roots, which is all about the young people in our team came up with it. And we want to take it out to the Caribbean right now with CariPhil Alliance, whereby it would be where the young people, we are passing the baton on, where they are now going to, it's called, the Roots and Plant Your Roots stands for reclaiming our oxygen, trees and seas. So it's more than tree planting. And that is what our vision was for on the ground in Trinidad, knowing that the tree planting exercise was kind of getting watered down over the last couple of years in Trinidad without having any tangibility and without even data capture. So for us, I think using the example of how CariPhil Alliance reimagined the Caribbean Tree Planting Project, where we took it online, and we have a bunch of competitions that has been happening. We just closed off. One was the Caribbean Tree Planting Competition online, where you have you keep a journal of your tree you plant. And the other one we did in Trinidad was the Green Screen Project, where we partnered with Green Screen to produce what you call a 1-minute short. And we also partnered with the 4-H clubs on the ground in Trinidad to offer essay competition to keep young people engaged, especially how school was out. So
Right.
I think more than ever, and Anthea, who is my team lead on the ground here, she runs an NGO called the Bridge Foundation, and her NGO was actually made to try and form strategic partnerships among those that do civil work, and also those that may have the ability, which it's growing and it's reducing in numbers, but those that have the ability to sponsor and give funding for these projects. So
Right.
it's really important at this point in time for us to understand where our strengths and where our weaknesses lie. And as a region, as Sydney and Dana, and all of us know, we have suffered from the brain drain. And I myself have 2 sisters that live away. And we need to find a way to, even if we can't attract them back, there's now the digital world where we could utilize their capacities to enhance what we already have been doing. The pandemic may be a blessing in disguise for the Caribbean, because there are things that we were falling short on at state level and at government level, where now we're being motivated to push for it some more. So yet
Definitely.
again, yeah, I'm challenging Sydney and Dana and all the youth-led organizations to find ways to reach out to people who you think could act as mentors and develop programs where we could learn from them before their knowledge is lost.
Definitely, Talia. Like I really enjoyed, hearing you speak about the fact that they don't necessarily have to come back home, but the future of work is changing so much so that you can tap into people's capacities and skill set, even if, they're in another country or in another space. So
Yeah,
thank you so much for that.
Hakim is from Trinidad, and that area that he'd mentioned,
Yes.
still suffers, it's marginalized. So
yes,
he's a good example.
Definitely. Some great work happening in Trinidad. So we're going to end now with Dana. So you have the last word, Dana. No pressure at all. But tell us, what are you doing? You're working in vulnerable communities. What does Israelhood does to help young people to feel safe and empowered? Like if you could list that in some points, like what are some of the things that Israelhood is doing to make young people feel safe and empowered in these times?
Yeah, thank you, Rochelle. And I think the way we structure our work is not for the vulnerable communities, but rather with the communities. And I think this is a massive distinction in the way we operate. And I see more and more organizations working this way. So that way the communities themselves and us define together what is needed to increase the safety and to increase the empowerment. So we partner with local organizations, with local stakeholders, with the community mobilizers, and we really try to capture the needs on the ground. And then together with these stakeholders, design the type of support and interventions that are needed. So for example, during the height of COVID, we worked with a local partner, the East Dominica Children Federation, to design interventions in the most vulnerable areas of the country. And we realized together with our partners that what the children and the families most urgently need is a child-appropriate explanation of the pandemic, a way to relieve stress and tension, and a way to foster stronger social bonds and family connections. Wherever it's relevant, it's impossible. It's on the outside, all they were hearing is physically or socially distanced. So the interventions that we designed together with these stakeholders essentially created the virtual tools to support those needs. And we used the tools that these communities already know, Facebook, WhatsApp, dancing, cultural songs, and so forth. We created a virtual recreation room. We made all the preschool children in the most vulnerable communities in the countries more empowered and increased their sense of safety through essentially resilience. So I really think kind of the bottom line is not for us to create interventions or to increase their sense of safety or empowerment, but rather to work together with them to create that together, because that way it's the true empowerment and it's the true safety that comes out.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dana. And thank you, Talia and Sydney. You're really phenomenal women doing amazing things in the region. And I would just like to, on behalf of everyone, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. At this moment, we had a discussion and now we have a call to action, because we support, backing up our discussions and our points with action, right? Youth is about action. And so at this point, it's my pleasure to introduce Tijani Christian, who is the chairperson for the Commonwealth Youth Council. Now, Tijani is a proud son of the land of wood and water, Jamaica, my home country, with a strong background in social policy and development and economics through his studies at the University of the West Indies. He is currently a project manager at the National Integrity Action in Jamaica. Now, Tijani represents the voices of over 1.3 billion young people from 53 countries and member states of the Commonwealth of Nations. And he was recently appointed as one of the 8 young members of the Global Board for Generation Unlimited. Please, let's welcome Tijani Christian.
Thank you very much, Rochelle. My fellow it's really, thank you very much for moderating the session so far. You've been doing a great job. And of course, I want to say thank you to the speakers who have been doing in terms of explaining their own work and what they've been doing to create this kind of impact in terms of youth activism in the Caribbean, and looking in the framework of how we can use science and technology in terms of impacting climate change. I was taking some copious notes, so definitely I will be reflecting on a number of things that were said. I will say to us today that I will start off with probably a quote by the then, not the then, but the now rather. Let me ensure that is clear. Prime Minister of Barbados, the Honorable Mia Mottley, she said, "Though we are all equal, some of us are called to bear a greater burden for the sake of others." And I think with all of us here as leaders, we can say that is for sure. We definitely know that we are called to bear a greater burden. We recognize that our responsibility, being educated, being where we are in life now, was not because of ourselves only, but because of the support system that we got from many others. And because of that, we have to do 3 things from what we've said today. 1, to invest. Invest to become resilient. It is clear that for us to be as strong as we are, and I heard things about the succession planning, I heard things about how do we ensure that our organization sustained itself beyond leaders themselves, but in terms of ensuring that there's a sustainable leadership, is that we have to invest in ourselves so that we can have greater impact, and invest in others that are part of our movement and organization, so that the life of your movement goes beyond you, the leader. And many times in the Caribbean and in many respects, especially in the political domain, we see that everything is so leader-centric. But we have to move the narrative to become more team-centered. And so when we reinvest energy and time beyond ourselves and in the team that is around us, will be greater. And so I think it was Talia who said that we have to ensure, even as NGOs or our youth-led organization, just partner with some major ones so that we can build the right connection to ensure that it is sustained. So investment is one. The other one for me is inspire. Of course, inspire to be relevant. I think some of the times we forget that though we are advocating, we must advocate on a place of our position that is extremely relevant. That means that our advocacy cannot be stoic, it can't be static. It has to be ever evolving. And so it means that we have to ourselves continuously ensure that we are in research that is grounded, that ensure that our advocacy is grounded in evidence, so that when we put our arguments forward, it is not just anecdotal, but it is grounded in facts, because that makes a true difference. because we are the generation that is called to ensure that our decision making is not based on whims and fancy, but it is based on what the data says. And we are that data generation. And the third point I wanted to leave here, which is critical, is innovate. Innovation for me is not just about the technology, or well, my smartphone just updated to the iOS 14, which I'm loving. It is beyond that. It is more beyond just using the Samsung phone or using the new MacBook Pro. Innovation is a methodology to always improve on what we are doing. It means that we are about continuity, whether business continuity, whether it is team continuity, in a way that is cohesive and not damaging to the environment. And so that is why the science and technology is so critical in a time like this, where we ensure that as we innovate, we are leading the way for the small farmer, for the teacher in the classroom, for the person who does business the same way each and every day. We're innovating to show them that through our advocacy, there's another way that you can get this done that is cheaper and more clean to the environment. It may cost you a bit in the get-go, but in the long run, it will be better. It's, for example, how we look at solar energy. We use fossil fuel all the time, but to buy that panel for solar energy, in the immediate cost, it seems high, but the long-term effect is greater than the one moment of that cost. And so what we have to sell to our next generation, and even the ones around us, whether older or younger, is that here it is. We have an opportunity for a lasting long-run effect, not short-term decision, a long-term that our grandchildren, mine to come, I hope, will have the opportunity to grow up in a world that is peaceful, cohesive, just, and that is environmentally friendly. The opportunity is now, not about just changing the next, but we can change some of the now. And I think we are here at a pivotal point to do that. And so I leave this with you. Though the future is never secured, no matter how strong the past is. COVID has taught us that. But one thing we can rest assured is that we are a set of people that will not give up because we are resilient. Thank you.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much to Johnny. I have a question for you, just segueing from what you just said. You know, what do you think is the role of capitalism in the issues that we're facing? Ready for the question, to Johnny? All right, okay. All right, so, okay, so what is the role of capitalism in some of the issues that we're facing, and how are youth addressing it?
Yes. What I will say is that I think the other day I was on a program for Decision 2020 where we were having our elections here in Jamaica. And one of the things I told them is that we are at a point in time in the world where it is not so much a political philosophy that is guiding one country or the other. What is really happening is a sociological identity war, meaning a sociological and ideology that has permeated history because of what we did not recognize, that from the 1940s after the Cold War, so much happened when we created a multilateral institution, whether the Bretton Woods institution, whether through the World Bank or IMF. We have different structural adjustment programs that penetrated developing countries, so much so that after 50 years, many of us have recognized that the development plan didn't work. So development project failed and we're back in globalization. And because it's cost the environment so much, we're now in the environmental era. And so we are recognizing more as young people, as we educate ourselves, that capitalism is beyond politics. Capitalism is beyond economics. Capitalism has become the way of life because it has seeped into the culture beyond just the North or the Northwest. It has come down into the South through television, internet, WhatsApp, how we see things, the culture, the traveling, everything about it. And so our way of life, this dream that we have to own our own house and all of that, and what it looks like has now become a capitalist reality because of what we have seen. So we are creating, we are only reflecting, not genuinely, innately saying in ourselves, we need this change. Many of the time it's because of what we've seen out there. And so I would say capitalism is not penetrated really us extremely. And so even political parties are finding it hard to differentiate themselves from each other because either of them have to sell a dream where, how do I make money right now? And that's what a young person has on their mind. How can I get rich and get it now without doing all of that work that many of us would have done through high school and university and masters at Taylor to finish their master, and many of us would have gone on to postgrad. Without doing that, how can I do it now? And so political parties are in danger because they can't answer that question. Because everything that they've done, if you watch developing countries' politics right across the region, most of what they've said is very much similar, not very distinctive. So it is trying to differentiate yourself in a capitalist era, which is very hard to do. But what I can say young people can do, which is what we are doing as activists, is to be conscious, as a person would say in the North, woke, get persons woke. So they understand that the decision that you're making now has an extreme lasting effect, not just on the environment, but even on our political and economic system that exists beyond that. And so our advocacy must be connected. And sometimes we have some discussion in our different fora and circles that it becomes high, as we would say, young people would say, it's high, and we need to bring it down. We need, as young persons, and I think that's one I think Taylor and I'm forgetting some of the names here that are on this program are saying is that they're trying in their own way to bring that high level discourse through programs and projects that transform young people, and in that create the right messaging and serve it, like as we would say, have the right restaurant with the right menu and serve it to our young people, that you can find another way to get out. You can find another way to build up. But as you go up, be conscious that you are on a ladder or you're in a developing country that exists in a global market. And we sometimes are at the other end from the other. And how do we make up this gap? Innovation makes a difference. But as I forgot from Israel, I forgot her name, but Israel, as she said it very carefully, we have to economically empower our young people. Economically empower. And economic empower doesn't necessarily mean to be rich. What it means is to be economically independent in thought, that you do not wait on somebody to get it done for you, but you try to make a way out. Not illegally, of course, we say, but in a good many options that can elevate yourself as well as elevate those around you. And be content to know that though I may not end up rich, I am still of value. And that is critical in all of this. If we don't do that, then young persons are going to constantly believe that the end game must be what Beyonce has, what Jay-Z has, what 50 Cent has, and everything is back to another culture. That is not the end game. The end game is for your happiness to be valued as how you see yourself and to be economically liberated from what others think of you, as well as even your own country. And from there, inspire the others around you. That is the independence of thought that we are talking about. And I think that is how we challenge capitalism.
Right, like
I'll finish preaching now.
No, that was really enlightening and insightful to Johnny. And we're very honored and blessed to have you share those perspectives with us. We definitely learned a lot. So now we are just going to be extending, thanks to all the persons who have made this possible. I know the planning team really did a lot in getting us together here today, and I really want to extend thanks to the whole Clinton Global Initiative Network family, Thanks for having all of us here. Thanks to the speakers for sharing your insights, sharing your stories, and of course, amplifying in your own way the voices of the youth that you represent. I think one of the major takeaways I took from the discussion was that, representation matters. It's very important for youth to see other youth like them in positions of influence. And I think that this has definitely served to inspire us all. So thank you so much again for tuning in. Thanks so much for the audience. I saw some comments. And I just want to extend thank you so much for making this a success. And it was my pleasure, absolute pleasure, hosting today. I'll now hand over to Gary, who will take us through the rest of the session.
Thank you so much, Rosalie, for your incredible leadership and moderation on this call. And just echoing your words, just a huge thank you to all of our speakers. You've all offered us so much to reflect on, to think about, and to really take action on as we move forward. As a quick note, I know there was a lot of questions that were posed that we didn't get to, so please feel free to reach out to us and our team, and we'd be happy to connect you with any of the speakers on today's call to answer those questions and to engage with us further. And we hope to see everyone tune in to our next session, which is taking place tomorrow at 2 p.m. and the discussion will be focused on renewable energy in the Caribbean. So thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you to you, ladies.
Bye. Take
Nice to
care.
you, Rachel.
Thank you very
Bye,
much.
Sydney. Bye,
It's a
so
pleasure
much,
to be
Lori.
here.
Bye, Dana.
Logan and Lewis. Bye.
Thank you, Logan.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You all did a great job.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
so
Thank you, ladies.
Alrighty.
Bye.